Welcome, everybody. As you probably know, tonight we're going to be talking about LGBTQIA plus and gender justice. What does this mean for us? Part two. Uh, Before I kind of reintroduce our speaker, Emily Evans, just want to mention a couple of items. First, and as always, so many thanks to Nancy Brown for her technical work. We could not do without her, and she does so much of this. Thank you, Nancy. Um, so as I said, tonight we're going to be building on last month's learning session, but with some more content, some individual exercises, small group discussion. We were kind of pressed for time in January, so we've made lots of room for dialogue and Q&A in the follow-up session. So please put your questions as they occur in the chat, and I'll try to, send them along to Emily. Once again, I really want to assure everyone who is here that you need not worry about saying anything wrong, asking the wrong question, displaying what you may feel is your ignorance. We're all in the same boat here. So just a minor little, refresher about Emily. I've always liked the fact that in her webpage, and as I can attest, Emily has dedicated her career to unearthing and dismantling the many ways gender justice harms us all. I first met her in 2015 when she was most ably serving as the executive director of the Women's Foundation of Oregon as a result of her work on the Equal Pay Act and numerous other projects. In 2017, she was chosen to receive the AEW of Oregon Breaking Barriers Award, and it was an award which was well deserved. Okay, so Emily, are you fired up and ready to go?
I'm so ready. I'm delighted to be back with y'all. Thank you so much for having me. Um, and my hope is we have a slightly smaller group today, which is great for dialogue. And we're going to go over some review of stuff. And I got a bunch of really lovely, thoughtful questions that were in the evaluation for last time. And my hope is that this can be a little more bantery, a little more back and forth, and really driven by the curiosity of the group. I have some good content that I want to build on from last time, since now y'all veterans of the first bit of content. But my hope is also that this is a dialogue and it's really driven by the curiosity of the group, because there's so much richness to cover here and so much of it that's so deeply relevant to AUW's mission, to our experience as largely cis white women, and to the journey that Trish referenced as we all make our way forward towards liberation. I hope everybody got their liberation outfit on. Could we do if folks are able a little check in the chat? Actually, I love this question. Okay, so your name and your pronouns. If they're not already in your little caption, and what outfit would you wear to liberation when it comes? When we are free from white supremacy, from patriarchy, from capitalism, when liberation arrives, what is your liberation outfit? Or anything in particular that you want to bring with you? Anything at all. It's liberation after all. You don't have to be constrained by the question. I'm happy to say mine. I feel like, wow, it feels very weather dependent. But I love a tank top. I love a free flowing something. I also really love vintage country music. So I love Johnny Cash. I love Dolly Parton. Anything that invokes any of that would be great for me.
Yes.
I would probably pay more attention to my jewelry and especially the jewelry that connects me with women in my life that have made a difference, things my mother gave me, et cetera, et cetera. Um, that's me.
Oh, Marty, I love that. My wife's right down, barking right up that tree. The jewelry is really the key on that, and it's intergenerational in such beautiful ways. All right. Yeah, whatever I wanted to wear. Darn right. All right. Love it. Keep putting it in there. I'm loving the pragmatism. I'm loving the joy. We are going to start out by reviewing a set of the slides that we did early last time, just to hop down on those again. I'm going to add 2 advanced slides that we didn't cover last time that I think might be useful and helpful for folks. We're going to roll our way down specifically and talk about we kind of glossed over the most common microaggressions last time. We're going to bump on those again. And then we're going to talk about a set of ways in which homophobia, transphobia, gender injustice in general harms everybody. Everybody, not just the folks who are most harmed. And then we're going to do some reflection exercises on our own identity and how these things have shown up in our own life. And spend the last couple of minutes either chatting as a larger group or chatting as a smaller group about how those things have shown up and how we're grappling with them when we think about them and reflect. Okay, let's share this screen. Give me a sec. Okay, now y'all's job, and I know my AUW gals are task oriented, is to pop in when you have a question, especially if you're thinking about last time when you're like, oh, damn, I wanted to ask that, or oh, I remember this and I wanted a little bit more information. And Trish, I'm going to ask you to be our chat maven or chancellor, our chat chancellor. I like that. And to just pop in anything, so because I can't keep 2 eyeballs on both the chat and the slides all at once. Okay, here we go. All right, here we are. We went through some grounding concepts, a little bit of anatomy of oppression, some gender at the individual level, gender in society. We went through myths and facts, a little bit of gender and policy, and some allyship. We touched down on gender justice, which is a world where no one experiences any gender-based barriers to thriving. And we noted in particular that it is intersectional, meaning nodding both to the multiplicity of experience that has to do with oppression and privilege, but also nodding very, very deeply to the legacy of white feminism, which was extremely harmful to all but cis, hetero, white, middle class, American, able-bodied, neurotypical, any number of other privileges you want to kind of bundle on that haystack together. And noting that gender justice is in many ways the antidote to that way of thinking, and acknowledging that so many of us well-intended, really justice-oriented folks came up through a pipeline that was extremely focused on the limitations that white women were experiencing, and was less intersectional than it might have been, and was less intersectional than it probably should have been. We talked about intersectionality, which is the concept that race, class, gender, and other individual characteristics intersect with one another. We talked about Kimberly Crenshaw Williams and Patricia Hill Collins, and the deep legacy of that since the 1800s, made, I think, most manifest in early American history by Sojourner Truth, who really embodied the abolitionist and the suffrage movement, and that intersection and the complete coupling of them both in ways that deserve to be continuously celebrated. We talked about privilege and allyship. We talked about the anatomy of oppression in this delightful clip art from the early 2000s. We talked about how it starts with the self, which is just the beliefs that are rattling around in your own brain. And then it goes up to the individual and interpersonal, which is how we interact with one another individually and sort of on a day-to-day felt and embodied basis. And that's where we, I think in many ways, falsely attribute most of oppression to happen with biased speech or crappy behaviors or stereotypical beliefs. We think that that the vast majority of the problem is there often, but there's actually 2 levels above that, which is the institutional or the organizational, which are things that we interact when we go to the post office, when we file our taxes, when we when we go to the theater, when we watch something on Netflix, um, or we fill out a form on Netflix. And then we go up to the structural and the systemic, which is the water we're all swimming in. And that's the big, big gear. And we also talked about, in some ways, I think the beauty and the opportunity, the fact that all of the bias, all of the oppression, all of the injustice actually comes down from the big gear to the small gears, getting all the way into the self. That it the forgive me, the bullshit flows downhill. However, the goodness can flow from any gear, and it almost always only flows from the smaller gears to the bigger gear because that's what's contributing to it in a hydraulic sort of dialectic. So when we interrupt our own beliefs, Trish, as you said, when you're like, wow, that phrase just came out of my mouth and I am troubled by it, even though I'm just mimicking something that I have said for years and I've heard said around me. When we interrupt that in the self, when we interrupt it interpersonally, when you say, hey, you know what, so and so, I had to say this to my mom the other day. I was like, no, we don't say Oriental rugs anymore. That's not a phrase that we get to use anymore. And here's why. When we interrupt it on the individual interpersonal level, and then at the institutional level, when we have any form of power within our institutions or organizations, and we use it in the service of justice. You all here tonight, the folks who organized the session tonight and the session in January, that's institutional and organizational justice. So I love that change can come from any gear, and it most often and most beautifully comes from the smaller gears up to the larger gears. Okay, we have new material. Are y'all ready? This is the intersectional wheel of power and privilege. This is the tiniest writing known to man. But don't worry, I'm going to drop it in the chat. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I'm going to, oh, wait. I put the thing down here. It is meant to give you a sense of all of the intersectional slices of what we're talking about when we mean intersectionality. So there is obviously everything related to gender, which is heterosexism, cisgenderism, homophobia, and so on. And then there are other pieces related to race and colorism and colonialism and ethnocentrism. And it's meant to approximate, I don't know if folks have experienced a power or privilege walk before, where sometimes there'll be a facilitator who reads out a number of things and you either take a step forward or you take a step back or you raise your hand or you don't. And it's meant to help you reflect on your own identity and your own experience of the world. And those can be powerful exercises, but they're primarily for folks who hold a lot of privilege to be able to understand the privilege they hold. This one is actually one that we offer folks to do their own self-reflection around mapping their own power and privilege. So I'll send this out. For some reason, I'm having trouble getting the link. Because again, this is the tiniest possible writing, but there's an exercise that goes with it, and it actually it invites us to map where we fall. The closer in we get around things like I'm male, I'm cisgender, I'm white, I'm of European heritage, I have light skin, I am a citizen, I speak the dominant language, I'm Christian, I'm in my middle years, I have no traumatic childhood experiences, I'm neurotypical, I have robust mental health, I'm living without a disability, I'm conventionally attractive, I'm heterosexual. All of these things, the tighter your geography is, the more power and privilege you have access to on a daily basis. And the more disparate your shape, the less power and privilege you have access to on a daily basis. So it's almost like a thumbprint, which I really love because it's so unique to every person. And it really emphasizes the way that the experience of intersectionality is also unique to every person. There's nobody that has the same body as you. There's nobody who has the same set of experiences that you bring. And understanding that and coming to peace with it and working through that and understanding how it shows up in different parts of our life is really the pathway to powerful healing and powerful allyship. because until we know where we have power and privilege here, we can't know when we're in a position to be an ally. And I so appreciate everybody being on the call today. I'm guessing because of the intentionality of showing up as an ally to queer and trans folks, to folks that have less power and privilege, and understanding where we are with respect to these many, many different facets of our identity is a huge, huge component of being an effective ally. Okay. Then we chatted about gender at the individual level. Remember this old chestnut where we engaged in genital hieroglyphics? and we said there's only 2 boxes and that's it. That determines a bunch of stuff about the rest of your life, no matter what. And then this is what actually exists for all folks. We have all these layers, like a beautiful layer cake, that actually are entirely independent variables from one another, and they have nothing to do with one another whatsoever.
Can you remind us what cis means, please, Emily?
Yeah, absolutely. So cis is from the Latin derivative that means in alignment. So it's related to the root for a column. So it tracks all the way down with what's expected of it. And trans is the Latin root for across, which means that it cuts differently than we might expect it to from its origin point. And the origin point of all of this, the root of all gender identity evil, comes from this sex assigned at birth. That means that somebody looked at your baby little genitals when you were just born and assigned you a sex, and that flowed down to all of these other things that were supposed to be true about you, which are entirely independent, have nothing whatsoever to do with the way that your baby little genitals looked when you were born. It would be as if you were or weren't bald when you were born, and I expect there's a spectrum of us that were or were not bald, and that told you whether or not you were going to be right or left-handed, whether or not you were going to be an introvert or an extrovert, whether or not you were going to be able to drive a manual stick shift or not, whether or not you were going to be able to sing on key. All these things that are entirely unrelated that actually were looped up and bundled together by the patriarchy into these things that are supposed to tell us something about our lives. And the things that flow from this sex assigned at birth, which again we chatted about, actually isn't true to the actual anatomical expression of genitalia. We have millions and millions of babies in the US who are born with intersex characteristics where they're not easily classified to male or female. And we also have just a ton, just so many permutations of actual DNA that resist this biological sex categorization. So there's really no way that this holds up. If you interrogate it from any experience, whether it be a anatomy experience, a genetic experience, or the lived experience of the hundreds of thousands, millions of folks that are queer and trans, doesn't add up. And it's very difficult to ascribe naturality to something that where nature resists all of that binary in definition.
Can I interrupt you for just a minute? Because of Nancy's, could you pop back? Well, what does intersex mean? I think, genderqueer, non-binary, et cetera, androgynous, pansexual.
Just briefly. Yep. Let's put it in here. So we have biological sex, and here in the middle we have intersex. So there are genitalia at birth that are observably male, what we understand to be a penis and testes. They're what we consider to be categorically sort of observably male. With female, we have vulva, we have labia. They're the components that we generally consider to be observably female. There's at least 1% to 2% of infants born every year, which in the US means hundreds of thousands of babies that are born with genitalia that don't fit easily. This is a very easily Google search away. Maybe there's vulva, but there's also testes. Maybe there's internal testes. Maybe there's a micropenis. Maybe it's sort of a blend, and it's very difficult to categorize. And what's really pretty awful about this is that because of the patriarchy, because of homophobia, because of transphobia, because of all of these components, we have been doing surgeries, non-voluntary, really invasive, most times incredibly harmful surgeries on teeny tiny infants because their genitalia don't ascribe to these binary norms that we have created, that we've manufactured, that aren't actually true to nature. So
And I
we
know
have.
I know you were going to continue, but I just wanted to mention someone commented, why or how would you guess that all these unrelated continua, kind of referring to that other chart you had, were connected by the patriarchy?
Oh, God, because they want to control women's bodies.
Yeah.
Is my short answer for that.
We get it. We get it, Heidi. We get
right?
it.
It's systems of domination, right? If if everybody were free, then we wouldn't be able to control the means of production, reproduction, wealth, and you know what sucks? That sucks for everybody. It actually isn't great. We know this is a total divergence, but I'm loving the dialogue. We know that cishet wealthy white men who are, supposed to have it all, they're supposed to be at the top of the ladder that we've created of which bodies matter more and which don't, which lives are more important and which aren't. Those folks are dying deaths of despair at some of the highest rates. They aren't thriving. So if you look at a system that was designed to have this certain body and this certain lived experience at the apex, and those folks aren't thriving, that is a sick system. That is a system that is not serving anybody well. So it isn't even as if the folks that designed this system by and for them and the folks that should be benefiting from this system are even doing that well, which is just a testament to its moral bereftness, I think. Okay, there's quite a bit actually at the end that I want to get to about how it hurts everybody, which is very related to the question that we just had. But so yeah, there are folks that there's a beautiful documentary on, gosh, all the streaming services. I think it's Hulu. I'll send it out. It's a beautiful documentary about intersex folks who have been here since time immemorial and whose lives have been gated and under celebrated under white supremacy and patriarchy. And it's really lovely. And, statistically speaking, more than one of us knows someone who is born with intersex genitalia, just purely statistically. And that is an experience that is elided and punished and really subjected to some of the worst of what the patriarchy, white supremacy, and capitalism has to offer, which is saying something. Okay, so this is gender identity. This is how you feel on the inside. This is who you know yourself to be. So there is folks who know themselves to be men, folks who know themselves to be women, and then there's an incredible bounty of other identities. Here it looks in between, but it's really a constellation. If we can sort of, again, even a spectrum feels reductive here because it is so rich and it is so beautiful, and there's so many other ways to embody a human experience and a human body besides these two really reductive categories they've given us. So you can be transgender, which means your gender doesn't align, right, with the gender you were assigned at birth. Gender queer, non-binary, all of that means that you are non-cis, which, right, CIS. Cis means that these two, the sex you were assigned at birth and your gender identity here, are in alignment. That's cis, right? They're in alignment. They're in the same column. Trans means any digression at all, any crossing. And then you're in non-cis territory, which is beautiful and for time immemorial has been celebrated in non-white supremacist, non-settler colonial communities as a special gift from the universe and a special way to be that offers us all a richness and a reflection on life that's really important. We go down to gender expression. Now, gender identity is all internal. I'll hit back on that in a moment because we had one of the myths that folks asked about, and I'll return to that. This is how you present yourself externally. This is what you wear, how you talk, how you move, how you dance, what jobs you choose, what you choose to be your pronouns, or the way that you refer to yourself in front of other folks. This is everything related to your gender about how you present it. So on one side we have masculine, on the other side feminine, and again, this is reductive, but there's all kinds of things in the middle. Maybe you're both, maybe you're neither. Maybe you have some of one and less of the other. And it's really, in the best of worlds, a smorgasbord, as my friend Trina says, a smorgasbord of how you want to express your gender. And wouldn't it be liberating if we could just express ourselves without having to think about how it relates to the gender that we were assigned at birth, or the role that we were supposed to fill? And this last bit is about sexual orientation. And I made this point last time. You would be like, wait a minute. All the rest of it is about your body and your identity and your expression. That all seems self-focused, but this seems other-focused. To which I would say, you're absolutely right. So why on earth did we throw it in the patriarchy grab bag of shit that's supposed to be assigned at birth? Which is a damn tragedy, like the rest of it. And this is who you like. And there is, again, an incredible spectrum of how we express who we are romantically and sexually attracted to. And horribly, we have lumped that right all together in a set of columns that are reductive and generally pretty shitty. And we will get back to this little set of spectrums in a moment, because I want to ask folks to reflect on it. I'm not going to go through all the other slides, but we do love this one. Remember the bone boobs? So afraid are we of queer skeletons that we altered anatomy. Even they, like, look at the pigeons are there. This is a really thoughtful, composed bit of art, and we've really done it. We've really done it with this one. Want to hit on that since time immemorial, every record we have of every indigenous culture across the planet has queer and trans folks, has gender fluid folks. The languages, the art, it's incredible celebration of the richness of human expression. And it really was a group of pretty problematic folks, mostly from Western Europe in the Middle Ages and beyond, who decided that this was not a way to be and colonized the world over the next couple of centuries, and have eradicated the beauty and the importance and the long time cultural understanding that sex assigned at birth is not a determinant of identity. It's not a determinant of behavior, and it's not a determinant of who and how we want to be in the world. All right, we went through quite a few myths that I think were hopefully helpful to folks. I wanted to bounce on 3 of them that I got some additional questions about after the last session. Myth number 7, which is being trans means having surgery. And everybody can be forgiven for not understanding all the nuance of what the trans experience might be like. Up until, gosh, a handful of years ago, unless you had somebody in your immediate circle who identified as trans, there wasn't a lot of national dialogue about it, which honestly might have been a good thing, because now the national dialogue is targeting and violent and horrible. So erasure, I guess we get to decide which we think is worse: erasure and invisibility, or targeting and violence. Not either of them great, but what's important here to understand is that being trans actually only has to do with, go back to this spectrum here. The only thing that being trans has to do with is the difference between the sex you were assigned at birth and how you feel on the inside. The rest of this, all this business down here, doesn't matter. And what you do outside, especially your gender expression, whether you choose to go by different pronouns, whether you choose to take hormones, whether you choose to have surgery, whether you choose to dress in a particular way, whether you choose to speak or walk or act in any particular way, has no bearing whatsoever on whether or not you are a trans person. The only thing that is an indicator and the core of whether or not you're trans is if your sex assigned at birth does not align with your gender identity. That's it. There are many, 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 many people who have lived whole entire lives, have been born, lived for decades, and then died, and nobody knew except them. And maybe in some cases, not fully them, that there was a discrepancy here that made them trans. You do not have to do, say, or express anything in order to be trans. That's between you and your own mind and your own heart. Lots and lots of trans people do mercifully express that, and they choose to animate that in ways that have to do with their pronouns, with surgery, with hormones, with how they present themselves externally. And we love that for them, and we support them on that. And it has nothing to do with your legitimacy as a trans person. Okay, myth number 8. This is trans kids or youth are routinely receiving irreversible medical treatment and procedures prior to age 18. This is so wildly false, y'all. There are incredibly few kids that are receiving gender affirming care in general, let alone irreversible medical treatment. So what we mean by gender affirming care, which is a phrase I'm guessing folks are going to hear a lot more of in the next couple of years, particularly here in Oregon, when we understand in 2026 there's likely to be a ballot measure around access to gender affirming care in our state. Gender affirming care, it sounds medical, it sounds kind of clinical, but in many ways it's just about gender affirming life. Can people use the name and pronouns that they want to use? Can they buy and wear the clothes that they want to buy and wear without cultural, societal, or institutional punishment? Can they have access to the cosmetics or the hairstyle that they want to wear? A lot of this is simply about how do you move through the world, and people are affirming how you want to show up and how you want to be seen. There are components of it that are medical, however, right? There's puberty blockers, which actually inhibit the development of secondary sex characteristics, which go beyond genitalia and move into things like an Adam's apple or facial hair or breast development or the onset of menses, the things that we understand to kind of affirm a particular body and the way that that body moves through the world. That is not the reality for the vast majority of trans kids. Over half of the states have passed complete or partial blocks to gender affirming care. Even in states like Oregon, where we actually don't have any limits on it, and it's covered under the Oregon Health Plan, which is Oregon's Medicaid system, it takes years and years and years and years of navigating the medical system to get any care at all, let alone irreversible medical treatment and procedures prior to age 18. So even if you wanted your kid to have an irreversible medical procedure prior to age 18, you probably couldn't get it.
Emily,
so
I have a question
yeah.
for you.
Sure.
I've heard this in conversation. My husband's a psychiatrist, so he, touches this kind of area. But I've heard people say that, particularly teenagers being something other than, strictly male or female, and I'm using it the way I'm hearing it from people, it's cool now. So, they're going to vault into, gender affirming care, surgery, whatever, because it's cool. I will say I'm familiar with, having actually irreversible medical treatment. You're talking not just one doctor, you're talking about behavioral health, physical health, all sorts of other peer, connection. But anyway, I'm just going to put this out to you. So now, isn't it just so cool that some people are going to go get this irreversible surgery?
Gosh, I mean,
I hate to ask you this.
Oh, no, it's a great question, Trish,
and
it's one that and we all should be asking it, right? Because these are young folks, and these aren't things to be, any type of trifled with. I would venture that for the most part, anybody who, even now, even in the most liberal bastions of the country, it is it is actually not cool to be to be queer or to be trans, right? It's actually extremely painful to be divergent. And folks who embrace or access or find themselves to be better expressed through a divergent identity have usually gone through some long period of pain related to that. And I'm not saying that there aren't some instances where that pain is expressed in a way that might not actually have, might not stand the test of time in ways that we understand it, that we would want something that's medically irreversible to be. And I think what we actually see is a system that is not well equipped to navigate that. We don't have the peer-reviewed studies. We do not have the experts. We do not have folks from these communities who have experienced everything that they've experienced and all the comorbidities, all the mental health issues that go along with a gender nonconforming body or a gender nonconforming identity. So the system itself is resisting effective care. As it has, I mean, how often have women who have cardiac issues or heart attacks been ignored? Right? Like, how long has ovarian cancer and breast cancer gone understudied, underdiagnosed? But meantime, we're real up on it with the prostate cancer, y'all. We really got a handle on things that male-bodied folks experience. And so it's the fact that we don't have a lot of deep data and definitive information around these particular components is indicative of the oppression and the injustice in the system itself. And so my wish is that we invest deeply in better understanding how this shows up for kids in particular, what the standards of care are, and how we go about supporting that in the best possible way. And that would be a vision of justice that is extraordinary, because in 27 states right now, it's illegal to be trans in public. If your kid asks you to be called by a different name or a different pronoun, you could go to jail in 15 states simply for calling your kid by the pronouns and names that they wish to be called. I think I saw a hand. Marty, did you have a hand up?
Well, I did. I was going to just say that people that decide to come out are incredibly brave people, because they have so much going against them, so much, particularly on the job, and it could be, depending on their age, at home, their whole cultural existence. I mean, it's very, very, you got to be very, very brave to do that. It's a very hard road, and you can't take it lightly. And when people ask that feel trans and are asking for whatever they want, for example, if they wanted to have some sort of a surgery, they have to go through a tremendous amount of testing, psychological testing, and all that kind of stuff, so that they're not, it's not fly by night. And I think that people that were really thinking that it is fly by night have no clue of what these people are going through. It's really, really difficult.
I love that point, Marty. I have good friends and colleagues who've been on 4, 5, 6-year wait lists just to see a provider that has some expertise and could provide the type of care that we're talking about. So it is the barriers to folks who genuinely need this, in many cases life-saving care, is so much higher, astronomically higher than the small, vanishingly small, if not completely farcical number of folks who receive care that then they later regret. And let's not elide the reality of human experience, right? Raise your hand if you've ever done something that seemed pretty fucking permanent that you then regretted. Anybody have 2 marriages?
Good choice.
Anybody buy a timeshare that they really didn't end up wanting? We all, in human experience, we all have made choices that we thought would be some form of permanent or were really good for us in the moment, and it turned out perhaps they weren't. And let's make space for that, and let's care for that in the same way that we would for anybody else who made a choice that ended up not being the right choice for them. It It isn't about indicting everybody else who's made that choice. It's about holding those folks with compassion and care as they come to a greater sense of self-understanding. Oh gosh, I know we're getting about time here. This one. Gender affirming medical care was created by and for trans folks. No, it wasn't, y'all. Nope. Pretty much every bit of what we now consider to be gender affirming care, whether it be cosmetic like electrolysis or facial feminization or jawline augmentation or what have you, versus all the way down to actual genital surgery or top surgery. All of those were created for cis folks, or puberty blockers, all of them. They were created for folks who had early puberty or who had hormone disorders or who were intersex or who, just wanted to look some kind of different way. But all of it was actually created for cis folks. So by blocking trans folks from, in some cases routine, in some cases more significant, medical care that is actually meant to affirm their identity, we're blocking them out from things that cis folks created for themselves to feel better or to deal with a medical issue. So it's pretty fucked up that we're saying we created all this stuff so that we could feel better or we could attend to our medical issues, but we're blocking you specifically from having access to that because of your gender identity, because of the sex you were assigned at birth, and which frankly is pretty cruel. Okay, we're going to pop down this a little bit more because I want to get to these set of slides where we talk about the ways that homophobia, transphobia, and gender injustice, oh my gosh, this is funny, gender injustice, thanks, autocorrect, gender injustice hurts us all. So these are just a few reasons why I wanted to, since we've had a chance to sit with the information from last time, the sort of general definitions, and some of the myths and the common microaggressions, I wanted to talk about, even if you don't identify or you don't have someone you deeply love who identifies as queer or trans or non-binary or gender non-conforming or what have you, the ways that it hurts everybody. It doesn't hurt everybody equally. It sure does not, right? Our trans women of color who are houseless in Old Town, Portland tonight, are experiencing the intersectional oppression that we can only dream of the harm of, right? Or is the stuff of nightmares. And it still hurts everybody. So let's unpack that a bit. Homophobia inflames and increases gender-based violence. Over 50% of the cis women the cis women in Oregon will experience gender or domestic violence, gender-based violence in their lifetime, whether that be sexual or domestic violence. Homophobia, which is just Dan Savage likes to call it the redheaded stepchild of patriarchy, inflames gender-based violence because there's a reason that trans women in particular experience the highest rates of gender-based violence, because if cis men in particular are jostled in their understanding of who they're attracted to or how that person shows up or what their understanding of somebody else's gender or gender expression is, it can incite them to deep and in many cases irrevocable violence. It's extremely scary. And this is a learned behavior, right? We've taught our cis men in particular that there's only a certain set of the human feelings and human expressions that are okay to have. And if you deviate from that, you deserve to be punished. So if you find yourself, interested in or attracted to or questioning something about somebody else's identity or appearance, and then you find that it deviates from what you expected, the answer to that is often incredible violence. So gender-based violence is a massive problem in our state, in our country, in our world, and homophobia, transphobia deeply inflames that. It perpetuates premature heterosexual involvement for young people. This may seem counterintuitive, but the data are incredibly clear on this. When we live in a homophobic society, what we then ask everybody, but particularly our young people, to do is to demonstrate their heterosexuality, to prove it, right? Prove to me that you are not queer. prove to me that you are not trans, because that's very important for your own well-being, for your social acceptance, for everything involved in you feeling okay. So what you're going to choose to do if you're a young queer kid often is to demonstrate that by premature heterosexual involvement. And we see this, it's incredibly common. We have kids as young as 11, 12, 13 engaging in heterosexual activities simply to prove that they are not queer. And that is extremely damaging and painful. We also see this a great deal in the military. You'll see that one of the largest proportions of trans women in the US are actually former veterans who were assigned male at birth, who went into the military to demonstrate their masculinity, to demonstrate their straightness, to demonstrate their heterosexuality.
Oh.
We see folks engaging in all kinds of behavior to try to swing the pendulum back in the other direction because it is so painful and so scary to be queer or to be trans. It reinforces a reductive, simplistic, and binary thinking, which increases our biases, but also limits our creativity and it stifles our problem solving. If we look at the world as, a black and white or a male and female or something that's reductive and simplistic and easily fit into stupid little boxes, it reduces our mental nimbleness across the board. Right? If we're busy thinking about things that are categorical or reductive, we're not thinking about expansiveness. We're not thinking about creativity. Like the great artists of the canon across the human experience have been folks who have broken barriers, who've seen things in new ways, who've invited us to see things in new ways. And that, on a certain sort of core level, is a queering. It's a queering of perspective, of shading, of music, of all the beauty of human creation. Is the things that have brought us to the highest and most beautiful expressions of humanity have not been the same. They've not been reductive. They've not been binary. They've been the things that disrupt all of that. And it's a kind of a shitty tension that we're holding, because we celebrate all of that on the one hand, which, by the way, were largely done by queer and trans folks, and we punish folks for the identity and experience that actually creates that type of problem solving and creates and uplifts that type of creativity. This one is such a bummer, y'all. It alters our life course by impacting which careers we pursue, what family structures we create, and how we show up in our communities. We know for a fact that young men are unlikely to enter caring professions, nurses, teachers, because they're afraid of being labeled as queer. And whether or not they're queer, that sucks for them. Like that should be a space where they get to access their life's work if they want to. And y'all know here, of course, STEM fields, leadership fields, the military, anything that is perceived as masculine is very, in many ways, off limits, or women who enter those fields are going to have to be incredibly careful and thoughtful about how they show up in those fields. The family structures we create, whether or not we choose to have children, and how we choose to be friends with other folks, how we show up in our communities, what Little League teams we coach, and how we navigate our friendships with one another. The homophobia is so omnipresent that it dictates our life course and things like our careers and our families and our community engagement. What a horrible thing to have to limit something that's made up and shitty to begin with is dictating the course of so many folks who actually don't even share that identity. It's hurting everybody, and it sucks. TBH. I know we're getting close to time. 2 more here. It curtails our pleasure, our joy, and our sexual and romantic self-discovery. When we're given a very specific, very reductive, very binary script about what our bodies like, who our bodies are attracted to, and how we want to be in the world with our partners and our bodies and our sense of pleasure, it cuts off a huge amount of the human experience. And that sucks for everybody. It sucks more for queer and trans folks who have to go on the journey that it deviates from that script. But it sucks plenty for the folks that are interested in parts of that script, but not all of it. It's a very, either you get it all or you get none of it, and that's very painful and unfair to everybody, including our het cis folks. And finally, it eats away at our individual and collective humanity by normalizing othering and by pressuring people to treat queer and trans folks poorly. Right? Like my son, he's the child of queer parents. He's tons of folks in queer community. I hear him constantly hearing his buddies being like, "Oh, well, you're gay if you do this," or that. You know, it's like he's 13. That tears down his humanity, and it tears down the humanity of the people around him who are saying that, by diminishing others simply for how they don't ascribe to the columns that were made up by, frankly, a bunch of white dudes in Western Europe in, a couple of 100 years, which is pretty crappy. I want to, okay, anybody questions on this? Reflections, other examples? We could go on about how many ways and all the manifestations of how it sucks, even for cis het folks, that homophobia, transphobia exist.
There might be, I don't know if this is the time to do some, individual breakout sessions or not. I don't know what you'd planned here, but, I wonder if that might be helpful. Because, you've just given us a lot of information here, and it's, I have a feeling everyone is like reflecting. Although someone, please remind me about A2S plus.
So A is asexual folks. So folks who don't feel a sexual attraction to other folks or who want to have an embodied sexual experience with anybody else. And 2S is a term for Indigenous folks who fall on what we would call the queer or trans spectrum. It specifically captures that reality that Indigenous folks who fell in what we would now to understand be that category were uplifted and celebrated and had a very different experience than anybody who's not Indigenous. So it's sort of inclusive of all those, but it's also its own category, and it only applies to folks who hold an Indigenous identity. So you couldn't just decide, or anybody couldn't just decide that they wanted to be Two-Spirit. That's something that is the confluence of a queer and trans identity and an Indigenous identity. I'm really interested, and we have just a few minutes. If folks could take, I don't know that we have time for breakouts, but if folks could take maybe just a minute and reflect on, I can put a piece in the chat, a time when you were either punished or celebrated for ascribing to that column. A time when maybe you really wanted to wear pants, but your mom told you couldn't. A time when, you were at a dance club and you thought that other person who shared the same, sex assigned at birth as you was really, really good looking, and you would have wanted to go dance with them, but you couldn't. A time when you were worried about your kiddo, or maybe you told your kiddo, "Hey, that's not how boys show up," or, "Hey, you know what? Girls don't act that way."
Emily, I'll kind of start this off. There are a couple of circumstances. Firstly, being an attorney, way back when, I literally had gray pinstripe suits, skirts now, not pants, with, white shirts, starched, and a bow tie. And believe me, if I didn't wear that, I, it was a whole different thing. I guess I'd also say, when I was in college, I had a very close woman friend, and I did consider whether, and we both did, whether the relationship could or should be sexual. And I'm not, I don't know whether we were really, society stopped us from moving forward with that. I mean, we were very, very close, and, certainly we hugged and kissed each other. But boy, that was a huge, huge no-no. Um, and it was very confusing. What do you do with that? Is something wrong with me? Am I forever tainted? It's just, anyway, I'll bet there's more than one person out here who's had that kind of experience. Whether what they did with it, I don't know. But I think it's a pretty common experience. Anyway, I'll stop there.
Thanks, Trish. That was vulnerable to say, and I appreciate it. And I feel like that's the kind of thing that heteronormativity and patriarchy has told us it's not okay to talk about, right? That isn't a part of the beautiful tapestry of human experience, and that there can be something that matters deeply or that was very confusing that also was really okay and was also very normal and very typical.
Yeah, we have
I
some
know.
chats about
Yeah.
dresses. Gotta wear dresses.
Man, we police the hell out of girls with their clothes, don't we?
Isn't it
God
weird that
damn it.
somehow
So
men can
weird.
have their genitalia kind of protected, but ours have to be kind of open? Anyway, I'm sorry.
It's bananas. Like this, remember the straps, like the size of the straps have to be X, Y, your arms have to be down here. And I'm pretty salty with my daughter about it. I'm like, and what do we say to dress codes? And Bianca goes, fuck them. I'm like, that's right. It's a tool of the patriarchy. But I think it's so worth considering the ways that these things have impacted all of us, even if we don't identify as queer or trans. Yeah, Sue, go ahead. Go ahead.
I don't know if this fits in with what you're looking for. When I was a kid, I was a tomboy, total tomboy. I preferred to be out playing baseball, running with the guys, and just being a total tomboy. My elementary school or middle school homeroom teacher decided that that was totally inappropriate. And she did everything she could to try to, she made me take an etiquette class, sent me to 4-H to try to learn how to sew. I flunked it all. I was just like, no. Then she called my mom one day, and my mom said, just no, just stop. She's not going to go there. She doesn't have those feminine techniques because she and my grandma tried to teach me to crochet. It's like, don't have it in me. I was such a tomboy. But that did have to change as time went on. But when I started, I'm an insurance agent, and when I started in my profession, it was very much run by men. And that's what people expected at that point. It's changed a lot, thank goodness, since then. But I had to earn my stripes. So it took me a couple of years before the guys would come talk to me as well.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Just that.
Oh, that's such an important reflection, Sue, on two different levels. I feel like the policing, right? The policing that we do of our young people from early on. We have data now that indicate by 2 and 3, gender stereotypes are really solidified with young people. They can barely talk. They can barely find, their butt with both hands at 2 and 3, but man, they got their gender stereotypes sorted. We really indoctrinated them into that. I think something else that's really interesting, and your example is one that I think actually there tends to be policing of tomboys, but it's not nearly typically as fierce as the policing of effeminate boys.
Mhm.
And what we actually see is that women are more policed for what they don't do. They're not a caregiver. They don't wear a skirt. They don't do this. It's a lack of action or a lack of identity. And boys or folks assigned male at birth are typically policed for what they do engage in. Maybe they wear pink, maybe they're more effeminate, maybe they don't play sports. They're so the policing happens in different ways, but it's so painful. Toby,
Toby, yeah.
I'm a licensed clinical social worker. One of my really early cases at family service was a mother and her little son, and she was absolutely freaking out because he wanted to play with dolls. And I mean, there was work to do there, but I also think of all of the parents who freak out at something like this. How can boys become good fathers for whatever it is that life their life path is? So I just wanted to throw that one in. This dates back a long time, and I really don't think that that's gone away. There's stores that have the boys' toys and the girls' toys, and now they have to have a unisex, and girls' clothes cost more than boys' clothes for the same types of things. Thank you.
1000%, Toby. I love that. There's Lego Friends. Has anybody seen Lego Friends? Because regular Legos you couldn't possibly buy for girls. You gotta have Lego Friends. It's a different brand, which is also hysterical, Toby, right? Because what are GI Joes? What are little action figurines? They're dolls. They're just dolls. They're all dolls. All children like playing with dolls. It's okay.
Yeah, Emily. Pam Lindley wrote in. I think it's really important to note this, and I'm quoting from the chat. We have family that moved to Oregon from another state due to a child that identified by age 4 as not being gender identified at birth. So I appreciate that you're discussing this topic, as it was a fast learning experience for me when notified. I'll bet. Wow, I really appreciate you sharing that.
Thanks, Pam. I know we're over time here, so actually I think that's a lovely example and a warm and open-hearted example to end on. What we know is that there's 250,000 queer and trans folks in Oregon, 250,000. It's greater than the population of Jackson County, which is our 6th most populous county. And that's not counting anybody under 18. 30% of young folks identify as queer or trans. And that's growing. And what we also know is that over every state in the union has had anti-trans and anti-queer legislation introduced in the last 2 years, and 26 of them have accepted it. 50% of queer and trans folks or people who care for or are responsible for the care and tending to queer and trans folks are considering relocating from their homes, sometimes homes that they've lived for many, many generations, to go to places that are less terrifying for them. So I am not at all surprised, Pam, that was an experience that your family had. We're hearing that all over the place. And I think that we are, all of us in Oregon, going to be called in the next couple of years to very much define what our state is going to be for queer and trans folks and how we are going to accept what are essentially political refugees from other states in the union, particularly the Midwest and the South. And I just couldn't appreciate this group more. I can't imagine how beautiful it would be to be a family or a kiddo from another state coming here to the warmth and tenderness and care and curiosity and open-heartedness that this group has. So I thank you all so much. I'm delighted to continue to be in community with you. If you ever want to connect, please reach out. I'll send all of these materials out to folks. And it's just good to be here.
And you'll be, when you do, if you could send out your Intersect, that's kind of her business name, information about that should someone, want to connect with you. And Emily, there's a special place in my heart that has Emily Evans written on it. And I so respect the information, how you presented this, and your dedication to gender justice. And I thank you very much for appearing here. Thank you. And you can see all the thank yous. Take care. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Trish. Thanks, everybody.
I put in, are you available for other branches for Zoom meetings outside of Oregon?
Yeah, oh, I would love to. AAUW is very close to my heart, and I do a lot of trainings for nationwide groups or groups in other spots. So, of course, yeah, absolutely.
So we have your contact. Does everyone have your contact information?
Yeah, I think so, but I'll send it. I'll send it to you. I'll put it in the chat right now. Just
Thank you.
if I can spell it right. There we go. Listen, 40 came like a ton of bricks, y'all, and I can't see shit anymore. Which people told me would happen, but I think I resisted it a little bit.
I don't see it.
I sent that as a DM. Hold on. The whole
It's
group.
there
Okay.
now.
Mhm.
There you go.
And
There we
Evan's
go.
I
practice.
got it. I got it. Okay.
Yeah. No, this is the work I love. I love connecting with groups about this stuff, especially open-hearted folks who are just curious and wanting to know more and wanting to deconstruct the things that have hurt everybody.
Awesome. Thank you.
Emily, thank you for joining us a second time and missing basketball.
Yeah, of course. Of course. It was so good to be here. I hope to see y'all real soon.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.